The twin suns of Threxel Prime were burning bright in the sky as Jace Thorn, a young human explorer, stepped off his transport ship. He had traveled light years to attend the famous Festival of the Hunt, a grand celebration held once every 10 years by the alien species called the Threxeri. These aliens were strong, tall, and covered in short, patterned fur. They looked like a mix between a panther and a warrior. Their ruler, Queen Virexa, was known across the galaxy as both a fierce fighter and a wise leader. Jace wasn't a soldier or a warrior. He was a cultural ambassador. His job was to observe, learn, and build peace between species. He had been invited as a guest, nothing more. But as he entered the giant arena made of stone and vines, surrounded by thousands of cheering Threxeri, he had no idea that one small mistake would change everything. He followed the local guide, a young Threxeri named Kalik, who explained the events with excitement. Today is the day when warriors show their strength. It is tradition, Kalik said with a wide grin, showing sharp but friendly teeth. Jace smiled and nodded, trying to be polite. It's an honor to be here. Your people have strong customs. Kalik gave a proud nod. You will be introduced to the queen soon. When she arrives, speak loudly and clearly. That is the way of showing respect. Jace had studied some of their language, but it was full of sharp sounds and difficult tones. Still, he had prepared a greeting he thought was respectful. As the queen entered the arena, the crowd grew silent. She walked with strength and grace, tall and muscular, wearing gold armor with a long red cape flowing behind her. Her eyes, glowing faintly green, scanned the crowd before settling on Jace. Kalik stepped forward and called out, "Honored Queen, this is Jace Thorn, the human ambassador." The queen nodded slowly and approached. Jace took a deep breath and said the words he had practiced, hoping he got the pronunciation right. Rathkar of Exodrone. Suddenly, gasps echoed across the arena. A shocked silence fell over the crowd. Queen Virexa raised one eyebrow, her expression unreadable. Jace looked around confused. Did I say it wrong? Kalik's fur stood up. His voice trembled. You just said the challenge phrase. Jace blinked. Challenge phrase? What does that mean? Kalik swallowed hard. You challenged Queen Virexa for her throne. Jace's heart sank. No, that's not what I meant. I thought I was saying greetings to your strength and wisdom. Kalik whispered urgently. You missed one small word. You said I challenge your strength and wisdom. It's a royal challenge. It cannot be taken back. The drums began to beat. The crowd roared in excitement. Some shouted for battle. Others were laughing in disbelief. The queen tilted her head, studying Jace. You are brave for such a small creature, she said in a deep, commanding voice. But perhaps foolish. Do you understand what you have done? I swear I didn't mean it, Jace said quickly. It was a mistake. In Threxeri law, mistakes still carry weight, she replied calmly. You have issued a challenge. By custom, I must accept. Panic filled Jace's chest. He wasn't a fighter. He had no armor, no weapons. He didn't even want the throne. He just wanted to observe the festival, take notes, and maybe eat some local fruit. The queen turned to the elders and raised her arm. The challenge shall take place in 3 days, during the trial moon. Let it be known to all. The arena erupted with cheers. Threxeri warriors howled and danced in excitement. It was the first time in 100 years anyone had challenged the queen, and it was a human, no less. Jace stepped back, his voice almost a whisper. What have I done? Kalik grabbed his arm. You need to prepare. You will have to face her. You cannot run. But I don't want to rule anything, Jace said, his eyes wide. Kalik sighed. Then you better survive, because if you lose, you may not leave the arena alive. 3 suns had risen and set since the accidental challenge, and yet Jace Thorn still couldn't believe what had happened. He had come to Threxel Prime to learn and make peace, not to challenge a queen who could probably lift a stone wall with one hand. Jace sat in a round hut made of thick vines and bones. It was quiet, except for the sounds of drums far in the distance. The whole city was preparing for the coming duel, but Jace was not preparing for a fight. He was reading scrolls, asking questions, and scratching his head in confusion. Across from him, his guide, Calic, looked worried. "You must at least learn how to hold a spear," Calic said. "Even if you do not win, you must show spirit. The people respect bravery." "I don't want to fight," Jace replied, rubbing his forehead. "If I try to fight her, I'll lose in seconds. She's twice my size. What I need is a way to end this without violence." Calic shook his head. "Threxeri law is clear. The challenge must be answered. You cannot leave now. And if you do not show up, it will be seen as weakness. You will lose not only the challenge but also your life." That last part had been on Jace's mind constantly. He looked out the window at the giant arena far away. He could see banners being raised and hear loud laughter and cheers. The people were excited. This wasn't just a fight to them. It was history. A human had never challenged a Threxeri queen before. Suddenly, a trumpet sounded. Calic stood up. "She is coming." Jace stood as well, wiping his hands on his robe. "The queen?" Calic nodded. "Yes, she wants to see you before the challenge begins." A few moments later, the hut's curtain opened, and Queen Virexa entered. She filled the doorway, tall and powerful, her fur glistening under the sunlight. She wore simple armor this time, a dark blue chestplate with silver lines. Her golden eyes locked onto Jace as she stepped inside. Calic bowed low and quickly left them alone. Jace tried not to show his nerves. "Your Majesty," he said softly. The queen crossed her arms. "I came to see the human who dared to challenge me." Jace took a deep breath. "I didn't mean to challenge you. It was a language mistake." Virexa smiled, showing sharp teeth, but there was amusement in her eyes. "Yes, that's what they told me. A simple human tongue slipped. But our law is not so simple." "I understand that now," Jace replied. "But I was hoping maybe we could solve this another way." "You are not the first to challenge me," she said, walking slowly around the room. "But you are the first to do it by accident. Most who tried before were strong warriors, trained and bold. I crushed them all." Jace stayed quiet. "You don't smell like a fighter," she added. "You smell like a thinker. Soft, curious. I wonder, are you even afraid of me?" Jace thought about it. "Yes," he admitted, "but not because you're a warrior. I'm afraid because I didn't come here to fight anyone. I came to understand your people. And now I've put myself in the worst position possible." Virexa laughed, a deep, rumbling sound. "You are honest, at least. That is rare. Most lie when they stand before me." She turned and looked directly into his eyes. "You cannot run from this," she said. "You must face me, but I will give you a choice. Choose your form of trial. It can be combat, or it can be something else." Jace's heart jumped. "Something else? Like what?" The queen shrugged. "In ancient days, our people allowed trials of wisdom, spirit, and leadership. Most forgot these old ways. But I remember. If you dare, I will let you pick that path." Jace thought quickly. He had no chance in combat, but a trial of leadership or strategy. Maybe he could survive that. "I choose the old ways," he said at last. "Test me with wisdom, with leadership." Virexa raised her brow in surprise. "Bold. Good." She turned to leave but paused at the door. "In 3 days, your first trial will begin. If you pass all 3, you will be my equal. If you fail, the throne remains mine, and your life will be decided by the council." With that, she walked out into the sun. Jace sat back down slowly, his mind racing. He hadn't avoided the challenge, but now he had a chance. A real one. He just had to outthink a queen known for her strength, pride, and cleverness. He looked at Calic, who peeked back in. "So," Calic asked, "what now?" Jace stood up. "Now, I find out everything I can about Threxeri law, history, and Queen Virexa herself. If I'm going to win, I have to beat her at her own game." The sun was low in the sky, and the wind carried the sounds of drums across the great jungle city of Varnaktur. The whole capital of Threxel Prime buzzed with excitement. Tomorrow, the first trial between Jace Thorn and Queen Virexa would begin. But while others sharpened weapons and trained in open fields, Jace was doing something very different. He sat inside a round stone building, surrounded by thick scrolls, ancient books, and glowing stones that held old memories. His guide, and now closest ally, Calic, helped him study. Calic couldn't believe how serious Jace was. "You've been reading all night," Calic said, handing Jace another scroll. "You don't even eat much. Are you sure this is the right way?" Jace nodded without looking up. "If I go into the trial without knowing the history of their laws, I'll lose. But if I understand the old traditions, maybe I can do something the Queen doesn't expect." Calic sat down beside him, tail flicking back and forth. "You're not like others we've met. Most humans want to impress us with their tools or power. But you listen." Jace smiled a little. "Listening is how you learn. It's how you survive when you can't fight with your fists." At sunrise, the city gathered in the arena. The crowd was massive. Alien warriors stood in tight groups, roaring and singing, waving flags made of fur and bone. All eyes turned to the center of the arena as the Queen entered first. She wore ceremonial armor, light but sharp, with a deep blue cloak trailing behind her. Her presence demanded silence. Moments later, Jace walked out, not in armor, but in a simple tunic with a symbol of peace stitched into the chest. The crowd murmured. Some laughed. Others looked confused. Queen Virexa raised her hand. "Today begins the first of 3 trials. By ancient law, this trial will test the wisdom and spirit of the challenger. The task: solve a crisis using only leadership, choice, and diplomacy." A large table was brought into the arena. On it was a map of Threxel Prime. 2 regions were marked in red: Rillick and Nordan, rival territories always at the edge of conflict. The elders explained. Both clans claim rights to the sacred river. Each threatens war if their claim is denied. You must choose who receives control and explain why. Then you must convince both to agree to your decision. Jace studied the map. He asked questions. He requested to hear the arguments from both sides. Clan leaders came forward, growling, proud, and angry. It took time. The sun rose higher. The crowd grew impatient. But Jace listened to every word. Then he stood, eyes calm but clear. "I cannot give the river to only one side," he said. "That would cause endless hate. But I see a better path." He pointed to a space between both lands. "Build a shared village here," he said, "near the river. Let both clans live and work together. Build a council made of members from both sides. They will decide how the water is used, together. That way, no one loses. Both must care for it, or both suffer." The elders whispered among themselves. The clan leaders looked uncertain. Then, slowly, one of them stepped forward. "We have fought for many years. Perhaps it is time to try a new path." The other leader nodded after a long pause. "We will give this human's idea a chance." The arena fell silent. Then came the sound of one Threxeri slamming their spear into the ground, a sign of respect. Then another. Then 100 more. Queen Virexa narrowed her eyes. She had expected a weak answer. She had expected fear. But instead, Jace had done something rare. He had brought peace where others would have chosen war. She stepped forward. "The first trial is complete. The human has passed." The crowd cheered. Jace stood quietly, his heart pounding. He had made it through the first part, but he knew the next would be harder. Later that evening, as he sat under a glowing tree in Calic's garden, he whispered, "1 trial down. 2 more to go." Kalak handed him a warm drink made from sweet jungle fruit. You surprised them today. Jace chuckled. I think I surprised myself. But the next challenge will not be about peace, Kalak warned. The second trial is about judgment. You'll have to decide someone's fate. And many eyes will be watching. Jace looked up at the stars. Then I need to be ready. Not just with my mind, but with my heart too. The next morning on Threxel Prime was cooler than usual. Mist rolled through the stone city of Varnactor, and the jungle birds were quieter, as if even they were waiting to see what would happen next. Jace Thorn stood near the edge of a tall cliff behind the royal temple. Below, a wide stone path led back to the arena where thousands of Threxeri would soon gather again. Today was the second trial. Kalak stood beside him, watching Jace carefully. This one will test your judgment, Kalak said. You'll have to choose between two wrongs, or find a path that no one expects. Jace nodded slowly. I passed the first trial by listening. I just hope that works again. Soon, a horn echoed through the valley. It was time. The arena was just as loud as before, maybe louder. The Threxeri loved trials of strength, but now they were curious about something new, a human using wisdom instead of muscle. Queen Virexa entered first, standing tall, her armor glinting under the morning sun. She raised her hand and the crowd went quiet. This is the second trial, she declared. Today, the challenger must show that he can make hard decisions. A ruler must choose not what is easy, but what is right, even when both choices bring pain. She turned to Jace, who stepped forward, calm but focused. Then two prisoners were brought out, both Threxeri. One was Takar, a warrior who had stolen weapons from the queen's armory. He claimed it was to protect his starving village, but stealing from the royal vault was a serious crime. The other was Rika, a noble advisor who had taken bribes and lied to gain power in the High Council. Her actions had hurt many, though she did it in secret, hiding behind clever words. The queen spoke again. Only one may walk free. You must decide who deserves mercy, and who must be exiled. The crowd buzzed with tension. Some shouted for Rika's punishment. Others called for Takar's banishment. But everyone watched Jace. He looked at both of them. Takar's hands were rough and cut, his eyes full of guilt but also truth. Rika stood tall, proud, but there was worry in her eyes too. Jace asked for time to speak with each prisoner. He walked to Takar first. Why did you really take those weapons? Jace asked. To defend my home, Takar said. The jungle beasts attacked. My village was losing people. I begged the council for help, but they ignored me. I had no choice. Jace nodded, then turned to Rika. You betrayed your people for power, Jace said. Do you regret it? Rika's voice was calm. Regret is not useful. I did what I thought was best. A leader needs strength to rise. But yes, I see now that I hurt many. Maybe too many. Jace walked back to the center of the arena. The crowd was waiting. So was the queen. He took a deep breath and spoke loud and clear. I will not choose between them like this, he said. Instead, I will judge their hearts by what they choose now. The crowd murmured in confusion. Jace turned to Takar. If I let you go, will you return the weapons and help rebuild the queen's trust? Takar dropped to one knee. Yes, I will return them myself. Jace then looked to Rika. And you? Will you confess your wrongs before the council and step down from your position? Rika's eyes flickered. Slowly, she nodded. Yes, I will accept the punishment. It is time for someone better to rise. The elders discussed quietly among themselves. Queen Virexa said nothing, just watched. Finally, Jace turned to the queen and spoke. True justice doesn't always mean choosing who is worse. Sometimes it means giving people a chance to fix what they broke. There was silence. Then Queen Virexa stepped forward. You have passed the second trial, she said, not because you punished them, but because you made them face their truth. That is leadership. The arena roared with applause and deep, echoing calls of approval. Later, as the sun began to set and the sky turned orange, Jace sat near a stream, finally resting. Calic joined him with a proud smile. "You've done the impossible," Calic said. "You've made the Threxeri think in new ways." Jace smiled tiredly. "I'm just doing what I know best. But now comes the final trial," Calic added seriously, "and it is the most dangerous of all." Jace looked at him. "What is it?" Calic's voice dropped. "Survival. Tomorrow, you and Queen Virexa will be taken to the wilds. No guards, no weapons, no help. The one who returns first wins." Jace's smile faded. "So it comes down to that after all." "Yes," Calic said. "But remember, this isn't about strength alone. You've shown what humans are good at. Use that. Think. Adapt. Survive." Jace nodded, looking up at the stars. "One more day, then this crazy challenge is over." The sun was low in the sky as Jace Thorn and Queen Virexa stood at the edge of the great Threxel jungle, where the final trial would begin. The air was thick with the scent of wet earth and the call of distant creatures. The ground beneath them was soft, covered with vines and roots. The jungle was dangerous, wild, and unknown. And tomorrow, they would be dropped into the heart of it, with nothing but their wits and will to survive. The challenge was simple: find their way back to the city first. But for Jace, the danger was not just in the wilds. The trial had already started in his mind. Queen Virexa was not just a fierce warrior and ruler. She was a person with her own secrets and struggles, and Jace was starting to see that. The queen stood beside him, her eyes watching the horizon. She was a giant compared to him, her fur shining in the fading sunlight, her armor glinting with each movement. Yet despite her powerful presence, Jace noticed a different look in her eyes, a hint of something deeper. "You're not afraid of this challenge, are you, human?" she asked, her voice calm but sharp. Jace shook his head. "I'm afraid of the wilds, but not of you." Virexa smirked slightly, though it didn't reach her eyes. "I've fought beasts and armies. The wilds are nothing." He nodded. "But this is not about fighting. It's about survival. And that means adapting to what's around you." She didn't respond right away. Instead, she walked over to a nearby tree and ran her fingers along the bark. It was a simple, almost meditative gesture, but Jace noticed how her shoulders seemed to tighten as she did it. Finally, Virexa spoke. "I was not always queen, human. Before I took the throne, I was like the others, just a warrior with no future. I fought for food, for shelter, for survival." Jace raised an eyebrow, intrigued by her words. "You weren't born into royalty." "No," she said, her voice quieter now. "I fought my way up, as so many others do. But even after I took the throne, there was no peace, only more fighting, more blood." Jace didn't say anything at first. He had expected a boastful story of victory and power, but instead, she spoke with a quiet regret. He took a step closer, watching her carefully. "Then why do you keep fighting?" Jace asked softly. Virexa turned to him, her golden eyes glinting in the fading light. "Because that's all I know. It's what made me strong. But strength doesn't always bring happiness, does it?" Jace frowned. "I think strength is only one part of being a leader. What really matters is what you do with that strength, how you use it to help others." Virexa looked at him for a long moment, as if considering his words. Then, to Jace's surprise, she chuckled, just a small sound, but it was genuine. "You speak as if you know what it's like to rule," she said. Jace shrugged. "Maybe not, but I know what it's like to be caught in a battle you don't want to fight." For a brief moment, the two stood in silence, the sounds of the jungle growing louder around them. It was then that Jace realized something important. Virexa wasn't just a warrior. She was a person, like him, trying to find meaning in a world full of battles. The queen turned her back to him, her posture straightening as if preparing for the challenge. But there was a soft sadness in her expression that Jace couldn't ignore. "Tomorrow," Virexa said, her tone firm again, "we will see who is stronger, who will survive the wilds. But remember, human, strength is not just physical. It's about endurance. It's about will. And it's about making the right choice when it matters most." Jace nodded, unsure of what she meant, but sensing the weight of her words. The queen had just revealed a small part of her past, of her struggles. And now, he understood that this challenge wasn't just about him winning or losing. It was about something more. It was about showing who he really was, and perhaps, for the queen as well, about facing the truth of her own heart. As the evening sky darkened, Virexa turned and looked at him once more. "Tomorrow, we will see who will be the true leader. But know this, no matter who wins, the wilds will choose their victor. And I have fought in the wilds for longer than you have lived." Jace smiled faintly. "Then let's see what I can do." Virexa nodded, but her gaze lingered for a moment longer. "Do not be so quick to think you have nothing to lose. You are not the only one facing the wilds." Jace thought about her words as she walked away into the shadows of the jungle. For the first time, he wondered if the real challenge wasn't surviving the wilds at all, but the truth that lay hidden in Virexa's heart. The trials were not just about strength. They were about understanding, about seeing past the surface and realizing the choices that really mattered. The first rays of the sun broke over the horizon, casting a golden glow over the dense jungle of Threxel Prime. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and the sounds of distant creatures stirring. Jace Thorn stood at the edge of the clearing, looking into the thick foliage. His breath was steady, his mind focused. This was it, the final trial. Queen Virexa stood next to him, her tall form almost blending with the shadows. She didn't speak, but the weight of her presence was impossible to ignore. Jace could feel her power, her confidence, and yet there was something else too, something quiet and deep. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice low and steady. Jace turned to her, meeting her piercing golden eyes. "Ready as I'll ever be." The queen nodded, her expression unreadable. "The wilds will test us both. It's not just about physical strength. It's about what's inside. The journey to the city will be long, and many dangers await us. But the true test is not how we fight, but how we survive. You've shown strength before, human. Now show me your heart." Jace wasn't sure what she meant, but he nodded. This wasn't a fight to the death, but it was just as dangerous. They were about to venture deep into the jungle with no weapons, no armor, and no help. Survival would come down to their wits, their instincts, and how well they adapted. As the two of them began their trek through the thick underbrush, Jace couldn't help but feel a little nervous. This was unlike anything he had ever faced, but in a way, it was also freeing. He had no armor to hide behind, no weapon to rely on, just his skills, his mind, and his ability to think quickly. Virexa, of course, moved like a shadow through the jungle. Her powerful legs and sharp senses made her seem at ease, as if she had lived in these wilds for centuries. Jace, on the other hand, stumbled slightly, feeling the unfamiliar terrain beneath his feet. Still, he pressed on, knowing that the only way to succeed in this trial was to keep moving forward. Hours passed. The jungle grew denser, the trees taller, their roots twisting and snaking across the ground like massive serpents. The air was thick with moisture, and the sun was hidden by the dense canopy above. Jace wiped the sweat from his forehead. But Virexa didn't slow down. She was like a force of nature, moving with ease and confidence through the thick jungle. At one point, they came across a river, fast-moving and wide. The water was a murky green, swirling with dangerous speed. Jace hesitated, unsure of how to cross. But before he could ask, Virexa was already kneeling. By the bank, her sharp eyes scanning the water. She reached down and scooped up a thick vine, tying it around a nearby tree. "This will hold," she said, glancing back at Jace. "We cross together, but stay focused. The water is strong here." Jace nodded, feeling a little more reassured as he followed her lead. He grabbed hold of the vine and tested its strength before stepping into the water. The current pulled at his legs, trying to knock him off balance. But with Varexa's guidance, he made it across, their steps slow and careful. As they continued their journey, Jace began to notice something in Varexa that he hadn't before, a vulnerability, a quiet uncertainty. The queen, who had seemed so fierce and confident, was beginning to show signs of doubt. She wasn't speaking much now, her usual sharp words replaced by silence. After a long stretch of walking, they came to a clearing. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the jungle floor. Varexa stopped, her gaze distant, as she looked out over the open space. Jace stepped beside her. "What's on your mind?" Varexa didn't answer right away. Instead, she seemed to struggle with something inside herself, her expression softening. Finally, she spoke, her voice quieter than before. "I have spent my life fighting for a throne I don't even want anymore. I became queen not because I wanted power, but because I thought I had no choice. The Threxeri were lost without a leader, and I fought to protect them. But now I wonder if I've lost myself in the process." Jace was taken aback. He had expected her to speak of battles and honor, not doubt and regret. But he could see it in her eyes. She was conflicted. "You've done what you thought was best for your people," Jace said gently. "But that doesn't mean you have to carry the weight alone. Maybe it's time to let go of some of that burden. Maybe it's time for change." Varexa turned to him, her golden eyes searching his face. "Change? You would have me step down?" Jace shrugged. "Not step down, but perhaps share the responsibility. Lead with others, not just alone. You don't have to fight all the battles yourself." Varexa was silent for a long moment, her gaze distant. Finally, she nodded. "Maybe you're right, human. Maybe I've forgotten what true leadership means. It's not about holding power. It's about guiding others." They both sat in silence for a while, watching the sunset. The jungle around them seemed to pause, as if holding its breath. As the stars began to appear in the sky, Varexa stood up, her expression resolute once again. "The trial is not over yet, Jace, but what you've said, it matters. The future of the Threxeri, of my people, depends on more than just strength. It depends on trust. And maybe, just maybe, you've shown me a new path." Jace stood as well, feeling a sense of peace settle over him. "We'll figure this out together." The night had settled in, and the jungle was alive with the sounds of creatures calling out from the shadows. Jace Thorn and Queen Varexa had traveled far, their journey through the wilds of Threxel Prime drawing to an end. The last stretch of their trial was before them, but it no longer felt like a race. It had become something more, a test of trust, survival, and understanding. Jace glanced at Varexa as they made their way through the thick underbrush. Her usual strength and confidence were still there, but there was something different about her now. She walked with purpose, yes, but there was a new softness in her step. It was as if, for the first time in years, she wasn't carrying the weight of a crown alone. "The path ahead is clear," she said, glancing back at him. "But there are dangers. We'll need to move quickly." Jace nodded, his mind already working through the situation. It had been a long day, and they were still hours away from the city. But it wasn't just the jungle that was on his mind. The trials had shown him something important. Varexa was more than a warrior. She was a leader who had never truly been allowed to lead with others by her side. She had been alone for too long. The two of them continued forward, the soft rustle of leaves beneath their feet the only sound in the quiet of the night. As they reached the edge of a large cliff overlooking the deep valley, Jace stopped and looked out across the landscape. The city of Varnactor lay far below them, glowing in the distance like a beacon. "We're almost there," Jace said softly, taking in the view. But I have to ask, do you want to go back to being the queen? To the way things were? Virexa stood beside him, looking down at the city with a quiet intensity. I'm not sure, she replied. For so long, I thought that being queen meant standing alone, ruling with strength and power. But after these trials, after seeing things from your perspective, I wonder if I've been wrong. Jace turned to her, his expression serious. It's not about being wrong. It's about realism. There's another way. I think you've been so focused on protecting your people that you forgot to let them help you. True leadership isn't about holding the weight of the world on your shoulders. It's about sharing that weight and trusting those around you. Virexa was silent for a moment, as if considering his words carefully. Then she nodded slowly. Perhaps you are right. I've ruled for so long without truly seeing my people. I've always seen them as subjects to be led, not partners to be trusted. Jace smiled. It's never too late to change. Virexa looked at him, her golden eyes meeting his. What would you do if you were in my place? What would you want for your people? Jace thought for a moment before answering. I'd want them to be part of the decision. I'd want them to feel like they had a voice. Leaders shouldn't rule from a throne. They should walk beside their people. Virexa's gaze softened, a hint of something like relief in her eyes. I think I've been so afraid of losing control that I forgot what it means to truly lead. Perhaps this is what I've needed all along, a reminder that I am not alone. Jace gave her a reassuring nod. You're not alone. Not anymore. The two of them stood there for a moment, the weight of the journey finally sinking in. They had come far, not just in miles, but in understanding. The jungle no longer felt like an obstacle. It felt like a symbol of their shared struggle. They had survived together, learned together, and now they would return together, not as enemies, but as allies. As they began their final descent toward the city, the path growing clearer, Virexa spoke again. There will be many who question this change. The elders, the warriors, even the people themselves. They will not understand at first. Jace nodded, his face determined. But if you lead with them, if you show them that leadership is about trust, not power, they'll follow you. Virexa smiled, a genuine smile this time. I think you've already shown me the way. Perhaps it's time for me to show the Threxari what true strength looks like. As they neared the city, the glowing lights of Varnaktor beckoned them forward. The arena where their trials had begun stood in the distance, but this time, the arena was not the focus. The focus was on the future they would build together, a future where Jace Thorn, the human ambassador, had shown the Threxari queen a new path. The city loomed ahead, but Jace knew that it wasn't the city itself that would change. It was the people in it, the leaders who had learned to walk alongside their people, not above them. When they reached the gates of Varnaktor, the crowd gathered in silence. They had heard of the trials, of the human who had challenged their queen and survived. But now, as Jace and Virexa stood together, side by side, it was clear that this was not just the end of a trial. It was the beginning of a new era. Virexa raised her head high and addressed the crowd, her voice strong but filled with warmth. The time for war and bloodshed is over, she said. It is time for the Threxari to lead with their hearts, not just their strength. We will build a future together, one where every voice is heard and every life is valued. The crowd was silent for a moment, and then, slowly, they began to cheer. The roar of approval filled the air. Jace smiled, feeling the deep sense of satisfaction. The challenge was over, but the journey had just begun, for both him and Queen Virexa. Together, they would lead a people who had forgotten what it meant to trust each other, showing them that true strength came not from ruling alone, but from standing together.